Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here for the first Friendship Place webinar of 2024. This is a great opportunity to talk about what we did that was so wonderful in 2023, but also talk about what exciting plans we have in 2024. So we have several speakers from the team and the staff here who are going to sort of set the stage on what we've achieved across our programs and talk about what more we'd like to see happen in the coming year. They'll present and they'll talk, but honestly, what makes these webinars so vibrant and exciting is you asking questions that are relevant to you and thus relevant to the community at large. So please, any questions you have, just drop in the chat. Maybe I'll even call on you later on, but it really does make it exciting if you ask some questions in the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to toss to Jean-Michel, who is going to get us started. Jean-Michel, I think we start with you.
Yes, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being online with us this afternoon. I hope the new year is starting really well for you. And I want to thank you all for your support, of course, because we could never do everything we do without your help. So thanks for being here again. We've had a very successful year in 2023. We've had excellent outcomes. We've also have a growth in our practices, which, we continue to refine because we do believe in continuous program and practice development to keep our programs relevant and effective and also cost effective, which is important. We did have a growth in the number of people coming to us for services, and you will hear that growth is a bit over 10%, which is a sizable amount within 1 year. I want to salute the teams for their adaptability because we were able to handle this growth seamlessly, and a lot of work went into this. There were some surprises. Sometimes many more people came in some programs than we had even expected. So kudos to the staff, and thank you to the staff for being online with us also this afternoon. We have managed to increase staff retention. That was a key focus for 2023 by a lot, and actually within this fiscal year, which is FY24, we have managed to go even further in that direction, which is really, really great. Just a comment about our figures and why you see our annual impact report in the spring. It's because we wait for our figures to be completely audited by our teams of auditors, of course. They come every year, so that everything you see in the annual report is the final results in each category. I just wanted to mention that. We had a question about that recently at another webinar. We are on track and actually doing really well with our strategic goals. We're right now in a plan that will end in calendar 2025. And we have achieved most of our goals, actually, which is great. We're looking to refine in some areas, and we're certainly looking to engage staff at all layers of the organization to keep the process vibrant and have information flow throughout the organization, which is really, really important. But we are also having thoughts about a new vision exercise and starting to engage board members, participants, volunteers, staff, and really community members at large in this exercise, because next year, around May of 2025, we will start actually to plan for our next strategic plan, which will cover the period from 2026 to 31. My goodness, it seems so far away right now. We have grown our partnerships with academia, which I find really exciting, and then also so valuable because we share about what's going on in the field, how our models impact positively the folks who participate in services. We help that group also through best practices that they can share in classes, but we learn a lot from them also, and that's a wonderful thing. We have grown our partnership, for instance, with George Washington University. You'll hear about studies we had this year, or last year actually, and then conference presentations. There are more colleges, more academic group calling on us to present. which is really good. We've, of course, strengthened our advocacy work with this new focus on aging in place that Lynn is driving with the volunteers of the Education and Advocacy Committee. You know that many of us are concerned about what happens to seniors who either age into subsequent cycles of homelessness because they've been homeless before, or simply fall into homelessness after they retire because they cannot compete on the rental market. And then there is a thought now that housing first is, you know, well established as a model in the district, but also in the country at large. As a reminder, in the district, we've been using this model since 2008. Now it's probably time to add to it so that there are services at hand within buildings, for instance, that would help seniors stay with us as a community longer, because we know that, of course, there are some challenges that people face when they move from a community-based setting like Friendship Place to a medical model, which is quite different. So we do want to look at what we can do there to keep seniors in place with us longer. We've also strengthened our compliance and evaluation practices, and you'll hear from Jean-Louis and Rachel about this. And this is really great work. We've been doing it over 3 years now. I think it's absolutely vital in an organization to delve into what is going on in the programs and to make sure that we remain compliant with the contracts, and also how we evaluate programs is really important. So I'm really happy we're doing some of this work, which I think sets us apart from a number of organizations in town, and this is really good too. We have kept our focus on anti-racism with a very successful 4th season of the training series, which was attended with a record number of people every time during the fall. Looking forward to building the 5th one. So stay tuned if you haven't taken the series yet, and make sure you look at that in the fall. It will probably start again in September. And then, of course, the work on LGBTQ inclusion is so important in our system, and will be part of Pride officially in June of this year, which is great. Community engagement remains a very important part of what we do. You know that we speak a lot. We're a very front-facing organization. I hear sometimes from people, and we like that about Friendship Place. We truly are a community-based organization with this flow in and out of the organization from you to us and back. And thank you to all of you who have invited us to present to your friends, colleagues, neighbors, fellow congregants. We appreciate your support, and it's really important to us. You know, we have this great speakers bureau of people who have life expertise in homelessness that is steered by Alan. And so we can actually send people who have this experience to speak to your groups, as many of you know, which brings the whole thing home, really. When you hear somebody who has been there and shares that experience, you really understand what homelessness and rebuilding entail. We have launched...
If I may, Jean-Michel?
I'm sorry?
If I may, just for 30 seconds?
Yes, please.
I wanted to piggyback on what Jean-Michel just said. You know, people ask all the time, you know, how we grew. And we grew through word of mouth, you know, having people tell their stories and telling the true story of what homelessness is, and having people support us, you know, through those stories. So those, you know, we feel those stories are very important. It can be hard at times, but it's always worth the effort. Thank you, Jean-Michel.
Thank you, Alan. And Alan is in his car because he's waiting to speak at an event at the Armory to engage yet another group. So that's great. We launched the Happiness Index in 2023. So we surveyed 190 people electronically to find out what they liked and didn't like, of course, about their life conditions. Generally, people said that they liked working with Friendship Place. They appreciated the support. The relationship was good. And then there were some other parts of their life, like a limited budget, a small apartment that they didn't like as much. But now we want to take this project further and have videos, interviews on video of people who will talk about their sense of happiness, what has made them happy or happier as they rebuilt with us. We want to showcase this because typical metrics are important, like housing retention and the number of days until placement in housing or employment, for instance. But we do want to put people first and put people's humanity in these videos, so they will be seen by people out there and sort of recenter the debate on the person, because our whole system at Friendship Place is person-centric, empowering, and we let people, of course, drive their own rebuilding process. So we want to know the things that have made people more happy as they came with us and worked with us. We'll brief you on that. We're going to launch probably the next video in a month or two. There'll be 2 or 3 in the spring. We're going to take our time with this because we really want good videos. And I'm happy to say Alan has volunteered to be in the first one. So this is great. And then finally, this is going to be a great year. Please look for the lineup of events. As we say, there are some really exciting things going on, like Friendship Place Honors, the new name for the Ben Cooper Awards, coming up, the walk, the embassy concert, all of that. So please join us for that. It's always great to see you. But we are launching this year 3 new programs, and Sean is going to talk to you about these programs. One is already on its way, actually, from November. It's a transitional housing program for youth. The second one in this category is a rapid rehousing program for youth that we're about to open. And then, of course, the Aston, this wonderful building that we will be running in the West End. We're very excited about this. It will be the first time that families with people over 18 will not be separated anymore, which is key. And the first time also that highly vulnerable people will receive medical services in-house. So we're, again, very, very happy to be doing this in collaboration with the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness and the Department of Human Services. Thank you so much. And please hold your questions until we are done with all the presentations. I am going to turn this over to Jean-Louis.
Okay. Jean-Louis, I think you need to unmute because I think I may have muted you before.
Okay. I did not even notice that you muted me.
Sorry. I'm going to share your slide now.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jean-Louis Ikambana, and I serve as the Vice President of Corporate Affairs at Friendship Place. As such, actually, I'm in charge of overseeing the department that is actually conducting program evaluations, compliance, and making sure that our organization is free from risk. We want to minimize any risk that might impact the work we do and the community that we serve. I will be presenting briefly a summary of the impact, the key performance indicators that Friendship Place has been able to achieve in 2022. Those key performance indicators I would like to mention are a testimony of our collective efforts as an organization and commitment to our mission to end homelessness and rebuild lives, from our housing navigators to our outreach specialists, case managers, residential aides, administrators, all the way to our leadership team and our board members. The key performance indicators are once again demonstrating that we are all committed to the well-being of our participants, and we want to be committed, remain committed to the service of others, with the ultimate goal of ending homelessness and rebuilding lives in the DMV area through a high quality, low barrier housing and employment services. It is also a testimony to all of you. With all your support, as Jean-Michel was mentioning, mentioning, you keep us going. And also to our board, dedicated board of directors, always ready to help us to make sure that we have more resources and to ensure that Friendship Place remains a good steward of its finances. As you can see here, this is what we have been able to achieve in 2023. 4,993 people were able to benefit from our services. And that's compared to 4,697 in FY22. Among those, we were able to serve 3,195 adults, 709 families, 675 veterans, 343 youth, and 1,507 children. Through our two departments, programmatic department, the housing services and regional programs, of the 4,993, 3,894 were served through our regional programs. And you hear from our VP of regional programs talk more about that. And then 1,099 were served through our housing services. And you compare the 3,894 served by our regional programs to the 3,784 in FY22, and the 1,099 served by our housing services can be compared to the 863 in FY22. During this year, I was asked to serve as an interim VP of Housing, Vice President of Housing Services. And during that time, the colleague who works with me and who is with us today, Rachel Yakobashvili, who is a quality control manager, helped me collect the data while I was serving as the VP of Housing, and analyze it and make it through this very nice presentation that you see today. I'm going to ask her to unmute herself now and talk more about the more specific KPIs related to each program. Rachel?
Thank you, Jean-Louis. Chris, you can probably stop sharing so everyone can see each other and we can have a conversation. Thank you so much. My screen is very blurry, so I hope that I look okay and sound okay on your screens. I appreciate the opportunity to present some of the high-level key performance indicators at the programs. So to start, we were able to serve a whopping over 1,000 visitors at our drop-in welcome center, with services that included help with vital documents, benefits eligibility, laundry services, medical services, and other case management assistance, which is very impressive, and goes to what Jean-Michel mentioned of being we did not expect that level of engagement in these services, but we were able to meet them, and that was very rewarding. Additionally, with our AIM Higher employment programs, we were able to place over 200 participants in job placements with base wages starting over $17 an hour, which is very impressive and amazing. Our Youth Connect program conducted street outreach to over 150 at-risk youth, and our Before 30 program provided developmentally informed supportive services and counseling to 65 homeless and at-risk youth. Our street outreach program from the Welcome Center, which provides food and safety items to those living on the streets, served almost 130 individuals, specifically adults, I should say, separate number from the youth number. Our short-term bridge housing residents, Valley Place, served over 100 individuals, with 65% exiting to permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing within 120 days. Our permanent supportive housing programs, which include Neighbors First Families, Neighbor First Individuals, and La Casa, served over 300 individuals and more than 170 families, including over 400 children. And all of these programs had a housing retention rate in the 90th percentile, high 90th percentile, I should say. Our short-term family housing program, the Brooks, served over 140 families, including nearly 300 children, with about 65% of households exiting into stable housing within 90 days. Our Veterans First program served over 500 veteran households with a 95% homelessness prevention rate and a 100% program satisfaction rating. Very impressive. And lastly, our Bezos Day One Family Fund has served over 250 households to date, assisting families with financial needs such as furniture purchases, security deposit payments, and other financial assistance that they needed to really help them with the process of exiting homelessness. To speak to the Happiness Index project that Jean-Michel previewed, in 2023, the Corporate Affairs Department partnered with an external evaluation consultant and 2 graduate students from the George Washington University's Program Evaluation Department to conduct what was called the Quality of Life Survey amongst participants in Friendship Place programs. The survey was distributed and completed by a sample of participants in almost every single one of our programs, and all respondents received compensation for their time and contributions. The main finding of the study was that over 90% of respondents indicated that their lives saw marked improvements after receiving services from Friendship Place, which is an amazing, amazing metric for us to know that all the work that we do really does have an impact on the folks that we serve. So we're excited, as Jean-Michel said, to take this project to the next stage later this year. And finally, I'll just talk about the research projects, again, that Jean-Michel previewed. In 2023, the Corporate Affairs Department hosted a group of graduate students from GW as well, who worked with us on their culminating capstone project for their graduate program. This project was a comprehensive analysis of, a comparative analysis of LGBTQ+ homelessness and services targeted at this population in DC, Boston, and San Diego. And after conducting a thorough literature review, speaking with our direct service staff, and conducting critical research and analysis, the group's key findings were that the LGBTQ+ community faces disproportionate rates of homelessness due to various individual and structural factors, namely homophobia and transphobia. To address this, DC government agencies and homelessness services and resource providers, such as Friendship Place, should increase digital information accessibility, support critical policy change, and develop specific LGBTQ+ programming to provide resources necessary for folks to exit homelessness. Friendship Place has always been committed to focusing on these findings and recommendations as part of our advocacy and direct service work. This year, our department will be hosting another capstone project with the GW graduate students, this time focusing on the phenomenon known as not in my backyard, or NIMBYism. The key research question will be, what real or perceived impact do shelters and other types of residential housing programs have on surrounding neighborhoods? We hope to use the findings of this project to support advocacy against NIMBYism and/or to point to areas of additional support needed to correct perceived or real impacts on neighborhood quality of life. And with that, I think I'm gonna turn it over to Sean.
Yeah, Sean, over to you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Very interesting statistics. I just want to clarify one thing. I think last year we served just under 4,500 people. This year was just under 5,000 people. So yeah, that's about a 10% increase, which is phenomenal. What an amazing bit of growth we've seen this past year. So thank you all for gathering such data. Very much shared. Sean, over to you now. Thank you both.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Sean Reed, and I serve as the Vice President for Regional Programs here at Friendship Place. And as part of my role, I work with the program divisions of AIM Hire, our workforce development team, the Welcome Center, which provides street outreach, drop-in housing services, and youth programming, Veterans First, which is a grant-funded program from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs that is serving veteran and their family households across the entire DC metropolitan region. And then I also oversee the work at the Brooks, our short-term family housing facility in Ward 3. I also work closely with our Bezos Day One fund program, and we'll also be supporting our growing operations of the Aston in the coming weeks and months as we move forward with that project. I just want to share just a couple highlights about regional programs, and definitely once we release our impact report in the springtime, would encourage you all to take some time to explore that and the wonderful media that also accompanies that report when it is released. Some big highlights in regional programs this year. In our Veterans First program, we received quite an increase in our ability to serve, where the VA entrusted an additional $3.4 million to Friendship Place to continue the services of the Supportive Services for Veteran Families grant that we have operated as a direct grantee since 2012. And so we're well over a decade of providing services to veteran households across the DC metropolitan region with phenomenal results and outcomes in those programs, with a lot of satisfaction from our veterans who receive the services. We also work in collaboration with several other SSVF providers and also closely with the VA Medical Center and other appropriate program services focused on ending veteran homelessness. For this upcoming program year, we are increasing our goal to serve 550 veteran households throughout the region, which includes DC, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Frederick counties in Maryland. And then in Northern Virginia, the city of Alexandria, Arlington County, Fairfax Falls Church, Prince William County, and Loudoun County. So 550 households to be served in fiscal year 24 for our veteran services. And this is one of our largest teams here at Friendship Place. We have more than 40 staff that make up the team in providing these services across the region. At the Brooks, we are coming up on celebrating 4 years of operations this coming April. And what we've seen through the Brooks has been near capacity use of the space, where we are now nearing every unit in the building being occupied by a family who is experiencing homelessness. And our team is continuing to work tirelessly to ensure that homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring for these households as they come to the Brooks, that they're able to provide a high-quality experience that is safe and engaging for families and their children while in residency. A huge focus is also making sure that these families are moving quickly out of homelessness and into permanent housing. And over the course of the year, our team was able to hit an average length of stay of 68 days for residents at the Brooks. And so that is nearly a third less than what we are looking at a 90 to 100-day goal set by the Department of Human Services. And so just a lot of gratitude and thanks for the team for their continued work in supporting the families at the Brooks. Some other big highlights was our continued work with the Learning Club, which was highlighted during the Washington Post Helping Hand campaign this past holiday season, where we welcome a group of dedicated volunteers to the Brooks on Wednesdays to engage with the children and the students there with learning and engagement activities. This has been a wonderful opportunity for volunteers to be engaged at Friendship Place, and we're very thankful for the support of that team there. During the summer, the Brooks leadership team put on a Spirit Week at the Brooks, and so in the last week of July, there were a number of different activities that were held both for staff and residents there at the Brooks, including at the end of the week a wonderful cookout for all the residents there, and also our couple times this summer ice cream truck that shows up right there in front of the brook to provide cold, sweet treats to residents there. But we are looking, as we're approaching year 4 of operations here at the Brooks, of continuing our support to the district's goals of ending homelessness among families. Aim Higher had a banner year here at Friendship Place, and Aim Higher in fiscal year 23 provided 4 different streams of services to individuals who were looking for employment opportunities across the DC region. Aim Higher in their programming was able to provide very specific services for families who are experiencing homelessness under funding from the Bezos Day One Fund. We also provided employment services to veterans experiencing homelessness through the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program funded by the U.S. Department of Labor. We also were under contract and serving with the DC Department of Employment Services through the Jobs First pilot program. And this was focused on district residents pursuing full-time employment that was unsubsidized in the District of Columbia. And we provided those services through most of the fiscal year under that grant and contract. And then, of course, our historical Aim Higher, which we call core in the organization, that if you are looking for a job, you are dedicated to the process of getting into a job as quickly as possible with support from the team. We've continued to offer those services out of the generosity of donors to support this program. Aim Higher served and placed more than 200 individuals into meaningful job opportunities this year. And it's really important when we talk about meaningful jobs and meaningful employment, we use that as a definition by what the individual is pursuing, not necessarily consistently by a benchmark of it has to be full-time, it has to be a certain level of employment, because every individual is going to have very specific desires, goals, and needs when it comes to income and what they want to do for employment services. And so as an organization, we have always dedicated to being person first and hearing what it is that an individual wants to achieve by asking the question, what do you want to see happen as a result of engaging with us here at Friendship Place? And follow that as our leading map in the services that we provide. And so for Aim Higher, hitting greater than 200 job placements in this year, like I said at the top, is a banner year for this program. The Welcome Center, which has been our historical department here at Friendship Place, finished a really great year, celebrating 30 years as a site location in the organization. We opened the doors back in 1993 to provide low barrier engagement services to our neighbors experiencing homelessness in Upper Northwest. And the Welcome Center has grown not just in geography impact, but in program impact as well. One of the big things to share this year, and for if you're very familiar with us and have visited our Welcome Center, we have been very fortunate to have a long-standing director at the Welcome Center, Maisha Pinkart, who's been with our organization for more than 11 years. This past fall, Maisha felt the call to transition in her role, not out of Friendship Place, but to support Friendship Place in a different way. And she has been serving as the director of Valley Place, our bridge housing program located in Southeast Washington for the last 3-4 months now. And so over this time, I've been tasked with finding a new director for our Welcome Center services. And I'm happy to share that we have found a new director, and her name is Danica Hawkins, who has extensive work history providing homeless services and also work with refugees in Europe. She most recently served as part of Miriam's Kitchen Street Outreach Networks as a leader there. And so we also worked very closely with Danica in her capacity as she was kind of the point lead person for that organization's outreach work in Upper Northwest that we collaborated extensively with. So very, very glad to have Danica now as part of the team and in getting acclimated to the Welcome Center and what we do here at Friendship Place. At the Welcome Center, another big thing is that we grew our program services for youth. Back in the summer of 2023, we were approached by the Community Partnership for the prevention of homelessness about taking over 2 projects that were that were needing to be transitioned in the community, that were serving youth between the ages of 18 and 24 through a transitional housing and rapid rehousing model. Both of these programs are funded by HUD and so go through annual competition. And we as an organization looked at what we've been able to do in our history in providing top level youth programming as well as rapid rehousing services, and stepped in to say, yes, we will absolutely support these 2 programs as they go through transition. Now, these are 2 very similar, but there's also slight differences in these programs. One of these programs provides what's called a transitional housing to rapid rehousing model. And so when individuals are matched to our program services, those who are in transitional housing are going to receive a more intensive focus in the program services. And these will often be youth who are still pursuing education at the time, and so you needing to build out a longer period of time of stability in the program. They may be continuing to look for stable employment that will support housing after they graduate from the program. They may also have experienced different barriers, traumas, and hardships prior to coming to our program, and may need more extensive support from behavioral health services, or even learning basic skills in the home, such as from doing laundry, cooking, and so forth. And so the one of these 2 programs is able to provide a more intensive focus and a longer time for individuals to be enrolled in the program services, up to 2 years in what we call Lift Plus. And we have the ability to serve about 18 to 19 young people at a time through that program. And then the other program for rapid rehousing for youth is called Lift. Very similar in the approach. We receive young people through the coordinated entry system that our street outreach teams works very closely with. And we will be able to serve about 16 youth in total from that project. And so we received those 2 projects, one in November, the other in December. And so we're still in the very early days of the program transition, making sure that the participants that were transferred to us from the other provider are getting to know us, or we're beginning to build all of those key relationships and ensuring that their housing stability is in place as they receive program services. One of the other great things about these programs is that it's one of the first times that Housing and Urban Development has funded workforce development as part of a housing program. And so we were able to build out a youth employment specialist that is based at Aim Higher to be able to provide very intensive and career-focused services to these youth. So all services for youth employment will only come from these rapid rehousing programs to the youth specialists, which means they'll be able to, one, work through our model of jobs first for rapid placement, but then be able to look at a broader career trajectory for these young people, as opposed to that placement and then we step back and to do the retention follow-up. We're going to be much more intensive in our program services through Aim Higher. These are phenomenal programs, and we're so excited to be able to bring that and actually grow the youth department of the Welcome Center, where now we have a designated youth services manager that oversees our street outreach to youth funded by DHS, these 2 rapid rehousing programs, and our Before 30 case management program for youth and young adults. 2 other real quick highlights is that in regional programs, and I think a lot of, contributing to some of our growth as an organization and the number of people that we've served, with our working with our external affairs team and development, we received 2 really key grants this past year. One is from the Bob Woodruff Foundation that is supporting veterans across the area, and a big focus in our application was looking at supporting LGBTQ veterans in need. And then we also received a grant from TD Bank to provide prevention and housing support services to families at risk of homelessness in Prince George's County. And we received that in both of them right around May or June. And the TD Bank, we've already been able to support 40 families since May with the funding. And we are right on target to meet our goal of 58 households served this year through that project. And then we're following through with households on retention, that from this assistance that they are then able to maintain housing stability moving forward. And I will stop there.
That's a lot. Our program folks are doing a lot, as you can hear here, and really kudos to all of you for the work that you're doing. And I know personally I'm inspired every time I hear not just the numbers, but the stories. And I think I will loop back around and ask a question about some individual stories. But first, I do want to go and respect questions in the chat. So I may jump around a little bit here, but let me start by this. As we know, there's been an attack from some quarters in our country on the Housing First model. And Jean-Michel and Sean, what are you seeing in terms of growth of those attacks? What is an appropriate response? How can we mitigate those attacks? I'll just turn it over to you on that.
Well, this is something that's being discussed, for instance, at conferences organized by the National Alliance to End Homelessness. There is a concern that on the right, politically, some people are saying that Housing First doesn't work simply because the number of people experiencing homelessness is growing in many jurisdictions, including ours, by the way, as you know. But this kind of equation is just too simple. It doesn't work. Homelessness is growing because we have even more of a gap in terms of the housing needs we have as a nation, of course, and because of economic circumstances and the impact of COVID. But people are using that on the far right and the right to actually oppose the model. Some of you will remember that the past administration, for instance, had brought as a head of U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness somebody who had very, very questionable practices, including people being taken, bussed out of downtown areas and put into suburban areas where they were basically held in some kind of compound, a model he was selling to cities that showed that he could bring down homelessness by 90 to 95% in these cities. We obviously can't have practices like that. So it's a real issue and one that we need to keep our eyes on, because we don't know, of course, what's going to happen in November. But blending this answer with the question about homophobia, we were very concerned also during the last administration about the references, negative references to people who are members of the LGBTQ+ community, and particularly about folks who are transgender. And so something else to look at. We were also concerned, of course, about the references to people who are not documented, because we serve people who are not documented. So there is a lot in there, but Sean, I'm sure you can add to this in terms of the services and the challenges for people who are members of the community.
Yeah, I would say what's the concern or kind of the pushback on the model of Housing First is not to a particular political side. It has been growing kind of across, that there's even within communities that would be considered to be more progressive, such like as in Seattle, Washington, and other locations across the United States, that because of the rise of homelessness and interventions not necessarily meeting expectations, there's often this change, like the change will happen before the actual results come in. And then it's just like giving a little bit more time, like needing these interventions. They're not always going to work on on the same timeline, because everyone's experience and what is needed to address someone's unique experience of homelessness is going to vary. And so that's one of the things that has come up quite a bit in communities, is that the money gets pulled back or the resources dry up before the actual impact is seen. And then it's kind of this ongoing cycle where we see increases or challenges, and then we come back to the model and it's maybe given a 3-year or a 5-year window, and then results aren't seen a certain way. But there's so many other factors that go into play with the experience of homelessness, of how people are entering that. This is just one model, a very key model in practice. The other challenge is that Housing First has slightly different nuances community to community. When the model of Housing First was built as an evidence-based practice, and so when you change what it looks like in different communities, it can kind of get watered down. And so what may be in one place that has a lot of the focus, including access to mental health and substance abuse recovery services, you may not have in another community in the same way. And that can change the outcomes and the success of a model like Housing First. We as an organization, our housing programs are housing first in the approach. And I would say the one thing that sets us apart, and why in that report that Rachel did earlier, that successive retention in the very high 90s, is that when we help someone not just move into housing and then let them get acclimated, we are there working and ensuring that when you gain housing, there's meaning and there's memories and values that's created in those first few days. So some of those things that we do is making sure there's food in the fridge, making sure someone is not sleeping on the floor on those first few nights there, because that's a way to set apart that experience of homelessness from sleeping in a shelter or sleeping outdoors, to come in and then sleep on the floor in your own unit. We really want to make sure that we're creating that opportunity, and that helps to build that great partnership and relationship with our case management team and individuals who are moving into programs. We also, as an organization, are invited to talk a lot about Housing First. So in April this year, both Jean-Michel and I, as well as several other staff from the organization, will travel to Atlanta, Georgia, to present at the Housing First Partners Conference. Jean-Michel and I had the opportunity to do that 2 years ago in Seattle. And so we're definitely in the narrative and in the dialogue on the national level when it comes to discussing Housing First and the practices we have. We're invited to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. We've had staff invited to the full council of the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. I had a chance to talk about Housing First at the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration earlier this year. So Friendship Place is very much recognized for our approach and the model of Housing First. And that goes throughout everything, where you can take those principles and it can really drive so much of the program services that we do, including outreach, where we're focused on the Housing First. And so how you engage someone when they're in a situation of street homelessness can really help to boost that outcome when they move into housing as well.
If I can just interject something, since I asked the question, it does seem to me that the attack on Housing First is really changing Housing First to something like housing only. And your approach is Housing First, but it is very well supported with a lot of other services. It's not just housing.
There's a risk of that, yes. And model fidelity, as Sean says, is very important. Some providers are better at Housing First than others. Some are probably providing services that are not really Housing First. The team that created Housing First was Pathways to Housing in New York, and they are no longer a service provider, but Sam Tsamberis, who was their CEO and the founder of the model, travels to different locations to help people look at their models and make sure that their practices actually apply the principles and values of the model. And yes, this opposition is spreading into, as Sean said, more progressive areas. There's just a general misunderstanding of what's going on. And that, again, when economic factors linked to a pandemic create higher numbers, there's no surprise to be had. It doesn't mean that a model is bad. The model is good because it considers people where they are and helps people who are highly vulnerable on the single side, in particular, gain housing right away, so we don't leave them behind. And so we've removed the moral judgment on housing, which years ago used to go, have you been using drugs and alcohol in the last 180 days precisely? A lot of people would say yes, and you could not bring them into housing. So our model had flaws, a major flaw, because there was a moral judgment on housing, saying that you had to earn the housing, where there's no feeling among the general population that we need to earn housing. We simply have access to it. So fundamentally, it's a good model, and we need to defend it. Back to the opposition members of the LGBTQ plus community face. People are destabilized when they have to leave their homes too early, when they end up on the street, obviously. We look at helping people form families of choice, where young people can share an apartment, can help one another do better. I think there's still a lot of work to be done in that area. We've made progress, obviously, in the last decade plus with Marriage for All, but there's a backlash that's pretty obvious to some of us who are members of the community when you watch the news and read the articles out there. There was a question about services in the buildings we run from Kathy Lohman, so I just want to make sure people understand. We run, for instance, La Casa, a building for 40 highly vulnerable men, the most vulnerable men in the system that we didn't talk about. It's part of another cluster necessarily. And so this is 24/7. It's a lot of case management, a lot of supports around medical needs, psychiatric needs, addiction needs if they're there. It's again very person-centric, letting people rebuild at their own pace and drive the rebuilding process. People have case managers in-house in that location. What makes the difference between somebody who is living in their own apartment out there in the city, and we have close to 280 singles in that situation, and close to 180 families also, is that the supports are more intensive. And we talked about housing first and the way it probably needs to add some resources and have them much closer to people. So this is the kind of building where we're looking to add some services, hopefully in the future, as we can, and can get them funded to help the men there access services more directly. One of the things we've done at La Casa in the last couple of years is that we've hired a certified addiction counselor, and that person has been very effective in her role to help people again engage in recovery activities at their own pace. This is all cafeteria style. You accept the services or you don't. Of course, there is no pressure, and of course, Housing First says that you offer the housing and let the person decide whether they want to get mental health or addiction treatment, for instance. That is all up to the person, which is again such a valuable part of the model.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions left in the chat, and we have about 5 minutes left, so maybe we'll do this in a bit of a lightning round. Sean, if someone who's in the Brooks doesn't comply with the standards expectations of the building, how does it work?
Yeah, I'm not even just bound to the particular building, but there are program rules that are established with nearly all of the publicly funded services, because it provides roles and responsibilities of not just the provider, but also what expectations are for a person who is receiving services. What I can say for the Brooks is that the key thing when you look at it is when something happens, is understanding, is this coming from a result of a trauma response, or is it just happening as a behavior? Like, that's the piece, is understanding the root like what is behind the behavior, because sometimes it is very much rooted in trauma and people are responding because of being activated from a trauma experience. And so one of the things we do at the Brooks is that we have to look at what happens case by case, and the impact of those instances. Anything that's dealing with unsafe behavior or violence or threats, we have to treat in one way, as opposed to if there's a, what we'll say is a going against one of the program rules of allowing for the weekly checks of the units to ensure there's nothing broken in there. If they don't participate in that, then there's like a progressive step system. But one of the things that we always strive not to do is to turn anyone back out to the streets. There's one of the things for the Brooks short-term family is there are other providers that we could potentially transfer them to. One of the other things too is that we kind of really take those moments and say, we understand it's not ideal to be here long-term, so work with us so we can get you to your permanent housing destination. And that's a key motivator in a lot of the concerns that will often rise up there, because people are tired of being in shelter sometimes. And that's how we can help people be motivated.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. So Susan, I'm going to go to yours here, talking about the difficulties facing older participants and how we address their medical needs and their housing needs. Can you talk a little bit about what we're planning going forward, or what some of our initial thoughts are?
Well, when an older person has higher medical needs and we need, for instance, to have an aide come in to help, we do that. We are also, again, thinking that in some locations, it would be great to have medical services closer to people so that they can access them more directly. We have a number of people who have been with us for a long time at Friendship Place. We're 33 years old, and some of the folks came in over 20 years ago, so they've aged with us. I think it's something that most organizations are facing, and whether people are actually looking at that or not, I'm not sure. But it's something that we want to do better with at Friendship Place. It's about wrapping additional services around the person so that people can stay in place longer, as I said earlier, and don't have to face a move up to a medical model. There's quite a difference between the community we are at Friendship Place and the way we are with people, as you can imagine, and a medical setting where things are set. I think people who have not experienced homelessness and consider these moves probably find that there are challenges in that process for them. But to add to it, of course, we have to think of the type of nursing homes that our folks are eligible for. And I don't want to, criticize Medicaid-funded nursing homes. Many are very nice, and then some are not. So we've had a number of people tell us that this transition was difficult, and I think it's honoring people's humanity and honoring our commitment to serve them, to try to keep them in place longer. A lot of dialogue also around aging and what happens with the person, and that's done through case management.
Thank you. Well, we are at 1 o'clock, and so many great questions. I'm sorry, if anyone has a question you didn't get to ask, please email me, crutledge@Friendship Place, and I'll pass it along to the right person to get the information that you may have. Thank you, everyone. Jean-Michel, Sean, Jean-Louis, and Rachel. Thank you for a great volume of information. And I think what's most important to recognize too is that when we talk about 5,000 people that we serve, it's people. These are individual lives that we're making a difference in, and it's, like I said, very inspiring all the time to talk to our team members and hear what they've managed to achieve in changing and turning around someone's life with the help of all of you. And we do it with your support and the support of a caring community. So thank you. I just wanted to flag again, March 20th is Friendship Place's award or honors. Friendship Place Honors, our annual awards ceremony. April 27th on the mall is our walk. So you'll look for more information about that. You'll hear about it the same way you would have heard about this webinar. More webinars to come throughout the year. Again, thank you everyone for your time today. Jean-Michel, any last comment you'd like to make?
I just want to thank you all again for being online with us this afternoon, and it's always great to see you. Please come and see us. We look forward to that, and please keep your help coming. We need you. Be well.
Absolutely. Have a good day, everyone. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.